The Buccaneers look to move to 3-0 while Sean Payton looks to break the hearts of Bucs fans once again and lead Denver to their first win. That and more on a crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Bucs and Locked On Broncos.
You are Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into a crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Broncos and Locked On Bucs, your daily podcasts covering the Denver Broncos and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We want to thank you for making Locked On Broncos and Locked On Bucs your first listener review every single day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. And of course, you can follow on Twitter. I am joined by Sayre Bedinger of Locked On Broncos. He is on Twitter at Sayre Bedinger. I am James Yarcho, the host of Locked On Bucs at JYarcho_Bucs. Both shows Monday through Friday, along with the Everydayers. Thanks so much for your support of the shows. Crossover Thursday is presented by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, to win $50 instantly when you play $5. The Bucs are coming off of a huge win against the Detroit Lions, while the Denver Broncos still going through some growing pains. We are going to talk about all of it coming up in a little bit, but we're going to start with the Denver Broncos. And look, Bo Nix is having a rough start to his season, to his career, but we all know Sean Payton can do some magical things with offenses. But what is the biggest story around the Denver Broncos offense right now?
Well, right now, James, it's really whether or not Bo Nix can get on track here in the early going of the season. We've seen the Broncos go up against a couple of really good defenses to start the year. I mean, Seattle under Mike Macdonald playing some good defense so far this season. And then, of course, the Pittsburgh Steelers, one of the best defenses in the league. Those two teams are top three right now in pressure rate. I don't know how much the Broncos have to do with that, of course, being that they've only played 2 games. But at the same time, Bo has faced a lot of pressure. And unfortunately, it looks like quite a good percentage of that is to do with not necessarily being on the same page of Sean Payton. I know Broncos fans have been excited this, offseason about, Sean Payton, he finally picked a rookie quarterback that he wanted, and he got his guy in the building, and, move on from Russell Wilson and all these sorts of things. And now we're seeing, the Broncos taking the play clock all the way down to 1, if not getting delays of games or having to call timeouts and things like that. The play calls, are they too long? Or is Bo Nix not hearing things? Or is there too many personnel shifts and changes out there? So it looks just a little discombobulated for the Broncos offensively. So while it's not on Bo Nix, he's going to be the primary storyline for the whole season, I think. But in terms of the guys around him, it really deals with, can the playmakers step up for Bo Nix and all collectively together bounce back against the Bucs?
Yeah, definitely a rough start for Nix. And I like Nix coming out of Oregon. I thought he was a great pick by the Denver Broncos, especially long term. But in the short term, of course, fans are going to be frustrated. But what a rough start to the season. You get Tomlin and Todd Bowles in back-to-back weeks. That is not a recipe for a level of comfort in the pocket for a young rookie. Well, I shouldn't say young, but a rookie quarterback. And of course, one of my other favorite picks of the draft, again, went to Denver, and that was Audric Estime. I absolutely loved him at Notre Dame. Hasn't been utilized too much, not really much going on in that Denver running game. And I wonder, is that because Denver just hasn't gotten a rhythm offensively in the run game? Has it been the defenses that they faced? Has it been because defenses are forcing Bo Nix to be the guy? Like, what's kind of going on with the rushing attack there in Denver?
Yeah, the Broncos are facing a loaded box of 8 or more guys, more than almost any other team in the league right now, and it hasn't translated well. They're being predictable when they go under center. I think they've run it all but 1 or 2 times when they've gone under center, so it's getting a bit predictable. in that regard. And like you mentioned with Estime, I mean, it would be nice to even see him out there. He's on injured reserve right now with the ankle deal that he suffered in week 1. Yeah. So you'd love to be able to see him. But even the guys that are running well, like Tyler Beatty, they call him up off the practice squad. His first carry goes for 16 yards, and then we don't see him for the rest of the game. So it does kind of feel like Sean Payton is spinning his wheels a little bit with somebody like Javonte Williams, who for 12 straight games has not gotten to that 4 yards per carry mark. And that's dating back to last season, obviously. So it's just ineptitude across the board, whether you're talking about execution from the backs or vision from the backs or blocking, or if it's telegraphing your plays, all encompassing. The running game for the Broncos just has not been there.
Well, let's flip sides of the ball here and talk about this Broncos defense, because they are bleeding rushing yards, but they are holding teams to under 20 points per game. And, a lot of teams would say, look, if the defense can hold the opponent to under 20 points a game, we got a shot to win this. So, a little bit of give and take, similar to kind of what we saw from the Bucs defense against the Lions. You can bleed yards all day long. Those aren't points, but what's kind of been going on over on the defensive side of the ball for the Broncos?
It's been really encouraging, really, really positive for the Denver Broncos defense. Vance Joseph obviously caught a lot of flack early last season. The Broncos gave up a ton of points, not just against the Miami Dolphins, but against teams like the Washington Commanders and others. And so it was kind of a disaster all across the board. But I think it really had a lot more to do with personnel than it did Vance Joseph, who actually I think calls a pretty darn good defense. And the Broncos, they've shown that through the first couple of weeks. The only thing that I think they really need to do, the big storyline here against the Bucs, is, okay, can you force turnovers? You're showing that you can hold teams. Like they held the Steelers to just 3 points in the second half, punting on 6 of their 7 or 8 possessions, whatever it was in the second half. So can you now force some turnovers? Can you create takeaways and get your rookie quarterback some short fields to work with? We saw that's what sparked the Broncos' little winning streak that they went on last year. I know they were kind of turning the ball over at a unsustainably high rate in their winning streak last season, but that was what really sparked them, was creating takeaways, get extra opportunities for the offense. And I think that's now going to be the big story going on the road against the Bucs is, can you force a couple of bad decisions, or can you pop the ball loose and force a fumble here and there and get an extra opportunity for your offense? Because the defense, I mean, up front, they're playing very well. They're pressuring at a high rate. They blitz at a very high rate. And then you've got Pat Surtain and a breakout candidate in Riley Moss on the other side of the field playing really well at corner right now too. So Denver's defense, can they start creating the takeaways? That's going to be something to watch here in week 3.
Yeah, and I would be remiss if I didn't ask, with Pat Surtain, you're going up against an offense that has obviously Mike Evans, and then Chris Godwin has been absolutely incredible playing out of the slot for the Bucs this season. What do you see as Surtain's role in this? Is he going to shadow Mike Evans and force Godwin and the rookie Jalen McMillan to beat this Denver defense? Or do you think that they're going to kind of move Surtain all over the field and just try to set up the rest of the defense for the most success, knowing that Surtain is going to shut down the guy that's across from him 9 times out of 10?
Yeah, I do think you'll see Surtain on Mike Evans for the majority of this game because of the Broncos' confidence in not just Riley Moss on the other side of the field, but then Jaquan McMillan in the slot is one of the guys that I think they trust the most in coverage. He was very, very productive last year playing in the nickel when he was one of those guys. When you talk about personnel changes, the Broncos getting gashed early last season, they put Jaquan McMillan there in the slot, and all of a sudden everything turned around for that particular position. So I'm not saying he's going to go out there and shut down Chris Godwin, but I do think that Vance Joseph will be confident in putting him in that matchup, unless then he does start to struggle, at which point you may start to see Pat Surtain utilized in different ways. But I think as of right now, I would say that Vance Joseph probably confident in Jaquan McMillan playing in that slot and keeping Surtain on Mike Evans wherever he goes.
All right. Well, the Buccaneers look to continue their momentum. That is coming up next on a Crossover Thursday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. For most of us that like collecting cards, the idea of spending $2,000 or more on a Patrick Mahomes rookie card just isn't in the cards. I love collecting, but that's some serious money to drop. Thanks to slab packs from arenaclub.com, now it's possible to score gem mints for a fraction of their retail price. That Mahomes rookie that I just mentioned was hit from last week's Arena Club slab pack drop. Arena Club is the only repack that provides real value, a complete view of all possible cards, and clear hit rates for each one. Arena Club slab packs are revolutionizing the repack game with transparency. After your pulls are revealed, they'll immediately be placed in your showroom for safekeeping, selling, trading, or auction. The Arena Club grading process is accurate, fast, and transparent, with a full grade rationale provided and explanation of how your card was scored. Right now, you can get 10% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/lockedonnfl and use code LockedOnNFL. That's arenaclub.com/lockedonnfl, code LockedOnNFL, all one word, for 10% off your first purchase. Thank you again for making Locked On Broncos and Locked On Bucs your first listen review every single day. Make sure that you are checking out the new Locked On NFL. It is twice a week. You got the madman Tyler Rowland hitting you with everything that can be talked about in the morning. Then you can jump into the barbershop with Tony Wiggins in the afternoon. Locked On local experts, news, insight, analysis, everything in 30 minutes with the new Locked On NFL. And it's twice a day with the madman Tyler Rowland and the barber Tony Wiggins. All right, we're going to flip things over to the Buccaneers, who are coming off of a massive victory against the Detroit Lions in Detroit. And when you take a look at an offense that escaped Detroit by winning, Chris Godwin had a huge game. Baker Mayfield had a solid game, but this was not an offense that was moving up and down the field with ease the way they did against Washington. Now they face another tough defense in the Denver Broncos. But the biggest question, the biggest story surrounding this Bucs offense is, can they finally get the run game going with Rachaad White and Bucky Irving? Rachaad White last week against Detroit had 10 rushes for 18 yards. Bucky Irving, 7 rushes for 22 yards. They have faced back-to-back stout rushing defenses. Now they're going up against one that has allowed almost 300 rushing yards through 2 weeks. This new look offensive line, they didn't have Luke Gedeke last week, their starting right tackle, but you have a rookie center in Graham Barton. You have Ben Bredesen as the left guard. These guys are struggling to open running lanes for these running backs. Can Liam Cohen scheme a way for these guys to take advantage of a rushing defense that does allow a lot of yards and really get Rachaad and Bucky going? That obviously will start to open things up for Mike Evans, for Chris Godwin, for Jalen McMillan, even Cade Otton, who has like 1 yard receiving on the season. So the focal point this week for the Bucs is they have to figure out a way to run the football. This has been the league's worst run offense the last couple of years. And all the talk was Liam Cohen's going to get it going. Graham Barton, the rookie center, he's going to help with the run blocking, and it just has not come to fruition.
Well, and we have seen, like you mentioned, the Broncos in the first couple weeks of the season. It doesn't feel like they've been as bad against the run as the numbers suggest. I mean, gave up a big rushing touchdown to Geno Smith on kind of a broken play in week 1, which was a 30-yard play. And then you had like 2 drives there against Seattle where Kenneth Walker just he went in full Kenneth Walker mode, as we've all seen him do at times in his NFL career. And so there's been a couple of, just drives here and there where the Broncos have given way in that area. And the main reason for that is because of their instability at the linebacker position. Alex Singleton kind of been a tackling machine for the Broncos, but did miss a lot of tackles last season. And we've seen some this year with Cody Barton coming in from the Washington Commanders, expected to be the starter. The Broncos have actually been rotating Cody Barton along with Christian Welch, a guy that they picked up from who was cut by the Green Bay Packers just a couple weeks ago. Those guys have been rotating with the starting defense, not due to injury. So it's kind of a little bit of cause for concern there. When these backs get to the second level, are they going to easily be able to then get to the third level because your linebacker play is not good enough? And are the Broncos going to have those breakdowns where, man, you're keeping the offense behind the sticks, or, you're holding them to short gains on first down, keeping them in second and long, third and long situations. And then all of a sudden, a couple drives here, hey, the things are just clicking for the Bucs run game. That's where the Broncos have really gotten into trouble, is that the most inopportune times you're giving up these chunk running plays. And so that's kind of what I would be looking out for, especially with some explosiveness there from those two backs for the Bucs. So if the Broncos aren't able to take those right angles, or those linebackers can't get off blocks, it could be a similar situation here in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, and that's been the biggest thing. Rashad and Bucky, when they get in space, they are so dangerous. They're elusive, they're quick. It's a matter of getting past the initial line of scrimmage and getting to that second level to be able to get out in space and utilize some of their athletic ability and make guys miss. So that's going to be something that a lot of Bucs fans are really focused on. Do they have the ability to run the ball, especially if it's a close game like it was against Detroit and the Bucs are trying to run the clock out, not give the ball back, with under 2 minutes left. They couldn't pick up that first down running the ball. So it starts to become an issue. On the defensive side of the ball, still no Antoine Winfield Jr., still no Vita Vea. He's day-to-day with a grade 2 MCL sprain. I would say that it is a 99.999% certainty that Vita Vea does not play in this game. So can they replicate the kind of performance that they had against the Detroit Lions without two of their three defensive captains in this one? Can they get after Bo Nix with Yaya Diaby, who has not registered a sack yet this year? Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, who is playing well, but still far from what the Bucs and their fans thought that he was going to be as a first-round pick. You have a rookie in Chris Braswell, who has barely even shown up on the radar at all. Servassier Dennis was outstanding last week. Zion McCollum was outstanding. Jamel Dean was good. Jordan Whitehead has been an absolute superstar, but those injuries are going to catch up to you at some point, and the Broncos have explosive players on that offense. It only takes one play for the entire script to be flipped. So without the anchor in the middle of your defensive line and one of the best nose tackles in the NFL in Vita Vea and the best safety in the NFL, both of those guys out, are they going to have a letdown after that incredible performance against a high-octane offense like Detroit?
Well, Broncos fans, James, they still have nightmares about the last time Vita Vea went up against the Denver Broncos a handful of years ago. I think there's still clips rolling around of what he did to Lloyd Cushenberry in that game, but him not playing in this game, as much as we all love Vita Vea and watching him play, that's very welcome news for the Denver Broncos, who have, Luke Wattenberg, a first-year starter at the center position, and they've been struggling to not just run block, but pass blocking this year has been a little bit rough for the Denver Broncos. So being able to maybe have that bit of a reprieve after going up against some of the guys they've gone up against, it might be nice for that offensive line to maybe a get right situation for them. Although that's a really big stretch at this point, considering what we've seen from the offense, which, if not for safeties, you're averaging 11 points a game through these first 2 weeks for this offense. So any advantage the Broncos can get there is going to be helpful. Without Winfield on the back end, I will say the Broncos have been taking a few more shots downfield. We saw against Seattle, ultra conservative, bordering on sickening, the way that they were calling plays, 5 yards and closer to the line of scrimmage. And then against the Pittsburgh Steelers in week 2, we kind of saw a little bit more of that in the first half. They really kind of unleashed in the second half in terms of taking shots downfield. So you can't help but wonder, is that going to continue a little bit here in week 2? And are we going to see more play action, especially with maybe some guys off the edge for the Bucs that are a little bit more inexperienced? Maybe you want to catch them over pursuing. The Broncos have, I think they're 32nd in the league right now in play action usage, although Bo Nix has been much better when they've utilized play action. So I would not be shocked to see a lot of play action from the Broncos this week as they kind of maybe try to overcorrect from these first 2 weeks.
Yeah, and of course, Bucs fans are hoping that Kalijah Kancey returns this week. Still not sure. He's been dealing with a calf injury. He has missed the first 2 games of the season. But for Broncos fans, they certainly want to keep an eye out for that. If Kalijah Kancey is able to line up there on the defensive line, that does change some things for the Buccaneers in a good way, a bad way for the Denver Broncos. But what are the three things that each team needs to do to get a win in week 3? That is coming up next here on A Crossover Thursday. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Right now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel any time. The Bucs are 6.5-point home favorites against the Broncos this weekend with an over-under of 39.5 and had moved up to the second best odds to win the NFC South behind the surprise New Orleans Saints at plus 195. But if you want to get on the action a little early, the Jets are 6.5-point favorites against the Patriots with a 38.5-point over-under on Thursday night. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to download America's #1 sportsbook. Wrapping things up here on a crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Bucs, Locked On Broncos. Crossover Thursday is presented by PrizePicks. Go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Sayre, what are the three things that the Denver Broncos need to do to get into the win column and pull off a big road upset of their own in Raymond James Stadium this Sunday?
Well, it's going to be three things that they haven't done through the first two games. Number one, they're going to have to run the ball. Number two, they're going to have to force a few turnovers. And number three, they're going to have to be effective and efficient in the red zone. Right now, Broncos are 32nd in the NFL in red zone conversion rate. So obviously they're not scoring touchdowns when they do get to the red zone. And they've been really bad in terms of forcing turnovers at this point in the season. They need to force more turnovers. If your pass rushers are consistently getting to the quarterback, as they have been, you might have to pop that ball loose. I know it's easier said than done. And then offensively, committing to the running game. Bo Nix has been getting absolutely flamed in the NFL Twitter world these days, as you've seen, I'm sure, James, because the guy's been throwing, I think he's thrown almost 80 passes in the first two games. That's kind of ridiculous for a rookie quarterback in his first, two NFL starts. The Broncos have not been able to run the ball. Javonte Williams, 1.5 yards a carry against the Steelers last week. Jaleel McLaughlin, not much better, 3 carries for 6 yards. So they have to be able to run the football, and they have to stick to it. They have to commit to it. Stop with these empty sets on 1st and 5 after a penalty by the defense, and you're running empty. You're giving away what you're doing out there. Sean Payton has to help out his rookie quarterback this week and commit to a running game.
Yeah, and look, Sean Payton knows Todd Bowles, and he knows what can work, what should work against a Todd Bowles defense, and that has some Bucs fans concerned because they are more than familiar with Sean Payton and everything that he did while coach of the New Orleans Saints. I realize that the Broncos offense is not what the Saints offense was, but that doesn't mean that there aren't weapons and that they can't expose some of the weaknesses of this Bucs defense, especially with some of the injury problems. But look, the Bucs are looking to move to 3-0 and really be able to solidify themselves in the eyes of the NFL world as contenders. So if they want to win this game, they've got to run the football. They have to get after Bo Nix and take advantage of a backup offensive tackle there in Denver. And the most important thing, do not overlook the Broncos. This Buccaneers rushing attack has not been good so far. It's not time to panic yet, but a combined 40 yards from your two running backs against the Detroit Lions last week is not what you want to see. Yes, both Bucky Irving and Rachaad White are dual threats. They were not involved at all in the passing game against the Lions. They have to be involved in the passing game, but they also have to run the ball efficiently against a defense that can give up big chunk plays in the run game. They have a good defensive line, but you get to that second level, and all of a sudden, guys like Rachaad, guys like Bucky, they can make players miss, and they can turn 4-yard gains into explosives. As for the defense, they have to get after Bo Nix. 0 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, get the pressure in his face, but more importantly, What they didn't do in Detroit is finish the play, get Nix on the ground. The Broncos are coming into this game with a backup right tackle. This is the time for Yaya Diaby to really step up and show the world that that hype train that he had all offseason wasn't for nothing. He's gotten pressures, he's forced bad throws, but it's time for him to start bringing down the quarterback. Same thing goes for Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. He has made some impact plays, but he has to bring the quarterback down. Todd Bowles is a master of bringing blitzes. He has to bring pressure from different areas without showing weakness in a beaten up secondary. And then the most important thing to me is do not overlook this Denver Broncos football team. It doesn't matter that it's a rookie quarterback. It doesn't matter that they're 0-2. This has trap game written all over it. And if you overlook this Broncos team, it can spiral out of control. It's real easy for the Buccaneers to look to next week with the Philadelphia Eagles, then a short week against the Atlanta Falcons. Then you have the Saints, the Falcons again. You have Kansas City, San Francisco, Baltimore, all those games coming up. It's real easy to start to look ahead. You have to focus on the task at hand. Send Sean Payton back to Colorado, sad and dejected, something they didn't do very often when he was in the division.
Yeah, and for Broncos country, it's really looking back at it's like almost deja vu. It started 0-2 last year, started 0-2 this year, took a road trip to the state of Florida and came back wondering, all right, what just happened? Is that even real? Or did we just see a game of Madden played in real life, right? When you give up 70 points. I keep bringing that up, James. Commenters are like, let's stop talking about that Dolphins game. It's deja vu. We have to talk about it until it's, until we can completely forget about it. But look, I mean, this is the situation the Broncos are in, right? It's almost like, hey, if you can go to Tampa Bay and show signs of life offensively, or show us that maybe you can actually, like, what can we build on offensively from this game, even if you lose this game, because you're expecting, like, this is a team the Bucs should probably beat in terms of what the Broncos have done, averaging 11 points a game as an offense so far. The Bucs are playing at home. They're obviously a really good team that's got some continuity based on last year. So this is a team in the Denver Broncos that the Bucs should beat. So if you can go in there and catch a victory, as opposed to what happened last year where things spiraled out of control, man, this would be, I hate to say it, as you'd only be 1-2, but for the Broncos, it would kind of be a banner victory early on for Sean Payton this year to be able to go in and beat an old division foe of his from when he was with the New Orleans Saints, as opposed to what happened last year. Things spiral out of control. The Broncos kind of become, are they sellers at the trade deadline? What are they going to do? Like Sean Payton said, these next two games for the Broncos, they don't define the season, but they are going to tell a lot about who this team is. And so getting a win on the road this week would be absolutely huge, not just for Sean and the perception of him from this fan base, but man, for Bo Nix as a quarterback to be able to play well in this game, I think that's maybe even more important.
Yeah, and a win by Denver in that situation can spark a run moving forward. There's no doubt about it. Like you said, it could be a banner victory, and it's those kinds of wins that can actually swing things within that facility with that roster and really make them start to believe, like, hey, we can go out there and we can hang with anybody, we can beat anybody. And those are the kinds of wins that you see send a team on an upwards trajectory. On the flip side, the Bucs are coming off of one of those types of wins. So losing this game against the Broncos undoes everything that they just did. It takes them out of the contender conversation. It takes them out of saying, like, this team is for real. They surprised people last year getting to the divisional round. Well, now they turn around and lost to a team that they should not have lost to. We talk a lot about stealing victories that you probably shouldn't get and then losing games that you probably shouldn't lose. The Bucs could see both of those things happen in back-to-back weeks. So it's going to be a really, really interesting one. And I'm going to be fascinated to watch the way that Sean Payton tries to attack the Bucs defense with the weapons that he has in Denver, having known how he used to attack them year after year after year. But Sayre, it was always a pleasure speaking with you. Everybody, please make sure you're checking out Locked On Broncos with Sayre and his co-host Cody Roark 5 days a week on YouTube at Locked On Broncos, and of course on all the podcast platforms that you like to utilize. You can check me out over at Locked On Bucs 5 days a week. And that is going to do it for this Crossover Thursday episode. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we thank you so much for joining us right here on a Crossover Thursday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.